So I'm going to be walking through the steps needed to disconnect and disassemble the rear HVAC unit in a 2004 Honda Odyssey. We're going to be putting this back into the vehicle once we're done. We're only doing this to clean out the HVAC unit. It's not a complete permanent removal. The 2004 Honda Odyssey is considered second generation. Anything from 1999 to 2004 is the second generation. I'll give you some more information here. This is the time periods and which ones fall under which generations. This is the second generation. This may apply to the other generations as well, but keep in mind that things are probably going to be a little bit different in their layout. So when I was looking for information on how to do this, I found a couple of videos that were sort of useful, but nothing that was just a comprehensive guide. So I'm going to leave links to those videos that were helpful below. Hopefully, though, this will be putting all the pieces together. One thing I do want to point out is that we're not completely permanently removing the system. If you read some stuff out there, they'll be talking about sometimes removing permanently the rear HVAC unit. That would involve not only removing the unit on the right, but also removing those lines on the left. And so they'd be getting under the vehicle, cutting lines, capping them, stuff like that. That's not what we're doing here. We're going to reattach this. So all we want to do is remove that unit on the right and keep those lines on the left. You can see on the image here I've highlighted the disconnection point of those lines to the unit. On the left is the heater core, and so the top two lines connect to the back of that heater core right at that back connection point. And then the bottom two lines are for the AC unit, and they connect to the unit behind the evaporator coil right there on the bottom middle. So to go over the first two steps here, first one is to depressurize the air conditioning system. There's a lot of videos out there on how to do that. There was nothing special about this one. And also the way in which you do this may depend on your location. So I'll leave a link to one video I found helpful in the description, but I'm not going to go over exactly how to do that. But it is important to depressurize the AC system before you disconnect it, because the AC system is under pressure. So the second one will be draining the engine coolant. The engine coolant is what flows through the heater core in order to heat the air. So I did do this. I have a video I'm going to post because my experience was a lot different than what was out there or what was in the service manual. I fully drained the engine coolant because it needed to be changed. However, after the fact, I sort of wondered if it's possible to leave all the engine coolant in and just maybe when you remove the heater lines to maybe just keep it vertical and put some sort of cap on it to prevent the engine coolant from spilling out. I don't know. I didn't do it that way. I removed all the engine coolant as it specifies, but something to consider there. Step 3 here, we're going to be disconnecting the HVAC from the wall by undoing 3 bolts. Here it's going to be 3 connection points that connects this to the wall. Going to be one right there, one down here, and then one down here. They look like this, and it takes a 10mm socket there, so something like that. Once you get that off, you're going to lift this up and sort of pull out. For step 4, if you look down the lines, you'll see there is 2 things holding those lines in place. One is a zip tie, which in theory keeps those together, and then another is a plate with a bolt that just keeps those lines up against the wall. So we want to remove both of those. The bolt is going to be a 10mm, and then we'll take a pair of scissors for the zip tie. For step 5, we're looking to disconnect the 3 electrical connections that are in the back of the unit. So we'll now want to pull away from the wall, keeping in mind that we don't want to stretch any of those electrical connections. So you want to look in the back, get enough space to where you can disconnect those and be mindful of not yanking it out of the wall and damaging it. Next I'm going to disconnect the connections in the back here. There's one that's green that I've already disconnected. There's another one right up top here, and then there's a third one right underneath here, brown right there. This was pretty easy. You just pinch down, pull out. These other two are a little more difficult. This one right here, all you need is a flathead, and you're gonna push on the side here, and then you'll pull out. This one down here is a little more difficult. It has a button that you hold down on the top there, but it really did not come out very easy in my situation, so I had to get that flathead, and while holding the button with using two hands, one holding that button on the top and then the other one just using the flathead to work it out there, coming into the back, trying to get it there. Eventually it came out. So once we move the HVAC out from the wall, we can then begin disconnecting the lines. We'll start with the easier ones, which are the heater lines. I have some videos walking through how I did that. I'll just scroll down here and show the instructions here. Next I'm going to disconnect these lines up here. There's 4 of them. The top 2 are for the heater. So I've already drained the engine coolant from the vehicle, but there may be some residual in there. So I've got some stuff to try to catch as much of that as possible. And then the bottom 2 are to the air conditioning. I've already depressurized the system, and so there might be some PAG oil that comes out of this. So we also need to be careful about that. So there's some overlap with the metal pipe and the black tube. It ends about right here. So you see this little clip started over here. What I'm doing is just squeezing down on this clip as much as I can, and then working it backwards to the left there. Alright, so I've got this clip down there. It seems like they use some sort of sealant here, probably this black shit around this thing, because it just won't come off. The way I was able to do it is you take a flathead and you just try to get under tubing as far as you can, and just sort of do it at every single point around the circle. And then once you've done that, take the pliers and try to just start wiggling it off. Alright, so one line off here. Just used 2 hands once I had it loosened and just slowly worked it until it came off. You can see this is the amount of engine coolant that came out of it. I put a towel here because once you initially take it off, that's when the most is going to come out, and you're not going to have enough time to get this bucket underneath it. So some did come out onto the towel. I don't know that it matters. I don't think it's going to do anything terrible to your vehicle. I think if you just pick out on the vehicle, you could just wipe it up and it would be fine, but just went ahead and put a towel there anyway. I'm going to disconnect those, and then I'm going to try to wrap it with some this is like sticky food preserve thing from Glad, press and seal, just to try to make sure nothing gets in the system. So after we disconnect the top 2 cords there that go to the heater, the next step is to disconnect any of the 3 connections back here that we weren't able to get. Alright, so with the heater lines out, we can now start working on removing the air conditioning lines. I've got some instructions down here that you can read. I've also got some videos. So now we have the AC lines left, and the connection that we need to disconnect is not right here, but rather it's back behind here. Next I'm going to cut away this foam so that we can see what's under there. Alright, so I got as much of it off as I could. You can see here that we've gotten enough to where we can see the connections here. There's 2 types of foam. It was that one that I took off, and there's another one up here. You can see it's sort of all connected together, so some of this other one came off. It looks to be a sensor right back there, right there. So you may want to be careful. Try to avoid taking this that one off, just the padding down here. So once we get that off, first I'd recommend taking some of that fabric and putting it underneath this thing so that it's not damaging the this thing here. If you have carpet, then that's not a problem. Next, we're gonna look in here. You can see that there's two small bolts in there. I've already loosened one of them. So what we're gonna need for that is hexagon shape on the end of a screwdriver here. Alright, so I disconnected that. Now, I had the system completely depressurized, which is something you should do before doing this. Even with it completely depressurized, when I removed that, some air came out of it, but nothing that was dangerous, so just a little bit, so just something to be aware of. Immediately after pulling that out, I wrapped it with Glad press and seal just to make sure nothing gets in the holes. Next, these lines are connected here, so the heater, obviously we're going to be able to remove that since we disconnected it there, but because these are still attached to the van, there's going to be a screw right here that we have to undo to free this plate and allow us to completely separate the HVAC. Alright, so with it out of the vehicle, first thing I'm going to do is I want to remove the heater core right here, because I'm afraid there might still be some engine coolant inside of it. So the first thing here is the screw right here, similar to what we removed for the AC lines. Once this is out, then we can just pull this out. So now that we've disconnected the heater lines and the AC lines, we can remove it and begin disassembling it. I didn't get any videos of the disassembly, but it's mainly, a lot of the screws in there are just your standard Phillips head, real small. There are some screws that are different, and in those situations, before I removed them, I took a picture of them just to remind myself where they went. I'll put those pictures up. As far as the maintenance that was done on it, the only thing I really found wrong with mine was there was some dirt on the blower motor, so I wasn't able to actually get all the way at the little fan. So what I did was just got a garden hose and sprayed water on it, and that got enough to get it off. The heater core and the evaporator coil were in pretty good shape. There's a little bit of debris on the evaporator coil, so I removed that, and then mainly the dust that was on the outside, I wanted to get rid of that, so took a towel, wiped all that off. The other thing was that there was padding on the large hole on the top and the side, those large holes. So I don't know what this was used for, but it had deteriorated over 20 years, so I just fully removed that. So one other problem I saw was that there was a piece of styrofoam right at the bottom of the evaporator coil that had some mold on it. I think what's going on is as the air goes through, condensation builds up, and how it's built is that it's right underneath a hole, so the water will drip out of that hole, and then the base at the van is also a hole, so it's designed so that the water goes straight out of the van onto the ground. This styrofoam was placed in between all this, so water was getting on the styrofoam that caused the mold. I don't see any purpose of the styrofoam, so I just got rid of it.